Welcome to Conversations at Studios Inc. My name is Courtney Wasson, and I'm the Executive Director of Studios Inc. Today we'll be talking with Rafi Chaudry of Torn Label regarding his micro-brew business and an exhibition that the Torn Label crew is curating with our gallery director, Rob Gann. Studios Inc. is Kansas City's arts nonprofit that offers pivotal 3-year residencies to mid-career artists. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Well, Rafi, thank you for joining me at the desk.
Afternoon. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good. So, I wanted to start first by offering you to talk about Torn Label.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Torn Label Brewing Company, we're a craft brewery. We've been in the south section of the Studios Inc. building for coming up on 5 years now. It's always been a really cool kind of partnership to have this space and that shares kind of an entry with the studios. Yeah, we were coming up on 5 years. We have a little tap room. We're a production brewery, so most of the beer we brew goes out around the city to bars, restaurants, liquor stores, on draft or in cans or bottles. We also do have a little tasting room, so people can kind of come in and have a beer on site here, and then also sometimes can kind of come right into the studios and check out the exhibition space, which is something we love to have happen as well.
It's wonderful to have you on site. It's a nice luxury after working to be able to walk right next door, and my favorite's the Old Believer, and that's usually in the winter.
Yeah, it's been our winter season the last couple of years. That's a big kind of Russian Imperial Stout, so it's perfect when the weather gets cold and you just want something a bit more sturdy, full-bodied to kind of keep you warm through January, February.
What's your current seasonal?
Right now we have a lot of rotating beers. We have 4 beers we do year round, but then we also just love to experiment and do something different because that's the nature of craft beer, is just doing something different and fun. The most recent release was a new batch of Hang 'em High, which is actually not a seasonal. It's one we do year round, but it's always kind of a little bit different. The idea is it's a rotating hop IPA. So we just released batch 29, and the concept of this beer is, it's always a big kind of freshness dependent hop forward IPA, but the hops change every batch, and that way it's kind of something that's, it's reliable in the sense that you always know it's a hop showcase, but it's also kind of experimental and different in the sense that, it's always a little bit different depending on what the hops that we kind of think would be fun to use. And this one is something we're excited about. It's a blend from a hop farm in New Zealand called Freestyle Hops, and it's just a blend of some really cool new school New Zealand hops, and it's their own kind of proprietary new blend, so it's not something that people have used before very much, so it's one that we're pretty excited about. It's got a lot of kind of kiwi, strawberry, kind of guava notes to it.
Do you keep track of your batches? Do you journal? Do you keep notes?
Yeah. The notes are pretty arduous. It's for our own purposes, and also just legally speaking, the federal Tax and Trade Bureau requires that you maintain a daily report log of operations for in paper copies that you keep on site at all times. So, it's helpful for us, but whether we want to or not, we got to keep those records.
Well, I'm glad you do. It provides an interesting history of your business or the beers.
Absolutely.
So what did you do before?
I was actually a film producer before I got into the craft beer industry. The whole endeavor was kind of a change of career, of geography, of life, of pretty much everything. I grew up in the Kansas City area. I grew up in Overland Park, but the last 6-7 years before I moved back to KC, I had been living in Los Angeles producing independent films full time. So that's kind of, I was didn't really envision a change for that. I'd gone to film school and I was working. I was really happy with the films that I had that I contributed to and was developing. But I had a contact in beer who ended up becoming our co-owner, who has a family background in beer on the wholesale side, and he kind of knew that I had this interest, this passion for the craft beer industry, which in Southern California, especially around San Diego at that time, is kind of world class and was kind of known throughout the world. And he and I started talking as in between projects, I believe, about the idea of potentially working together on something that was not film related, but was craft beer related, and it didn't really have, a shape or a specific concept at the time. But, I certainly thought that, it was it's one of those things. If people ask you if you might want to start a brewery, the laws of the universe require you to say yes to that. So certainly jumped on board right away and wanted to explore it. And I brought in Travis, who was our co-owner and brewmaster. He was actually at the time in Chicago finishing up law school, but he was also the most kind of talented homebrewer that I had known. I've known for a good, decade or so at that time. And we sort of developed a blueprint business plan of what we thought would, Torn Label would look like, and just kind of made it look a little bit like the breweries that we were fans of as beer travelers and as craft beer fans, and got the go-ahead from our investors, and both of us moved back to KC, and like I said, kind of coming up on 5 years now.
I think that's interesting that you were a film producer before, because it seems like the Torn Label lineup has a storytelling aspect to it.
Yeah, absolutely. We found in general that the more storytelling and a narrative can be a part of a beer, the better it is. The better it is for people to kind of wrap their head around it. There's been some really fun beers where we thought this is a really tasty. We love all the things that are going into it in terms of the hop, malt, yeast profile, and the beer is fantastic. But we don't know how to talk about it. It's just a really good IPA, and there's not a whole lot more to it than that. And so it's always so much better when there's something where you can kind of weave in, whether it's experiential or just a little bit of the adventures or misadventures along the way that kind of got you to what a beer was,
and create a culture around each beer.
Yep.
So why the East Crossroads? How'd you guys land here?
The Crossroads was always kind of a dream location for us when we were looking at neighborhoods for the brewery. We knew we wanted to be in KC proper in Jackson County, but we did look all over town. We looked at places in Waldo and City Market, and a lot of places that would have been great homes for us in a different universe of where Torn Label ended up setting up. But the Crossroads, was just had this great mix at that time, and still, if not even more so, this kind of local-based and artistic culture here. The way that this neighborhood kind of values local and values obviously the art scene, and that's been part of the fabric of the Crossroads for so long. That we thought that was a great fit for what we wanted to do in a brewing sense, and to be one of KC's local craft breweries, and to kind of have the beer be in some way inspired or kind of taking kind of find a cue in the art scene and the creative aspect of Kansas City, which is certainly all around us in the Crossroads, and even in our own building here was even more perfect, because it's not just that we're in the Crossroads and a part of the scene here. We literally share a working environment with an arts exhibition space and workspace, and so we never have to look very far at all for artistic inspiration.
Right, and we should clarify for anyone listening that Studios Inc. and Torn Label literally share wall space. We're in the same facility, and so if you park in one lot, you're probably walking by one business to the other. And do you want to share that you're expanding yet, or do you want to give a teaser about that?
To be revealed, to be determined. It's ongoing. We still have a ways to go. We're looking into ways in the early phases, hopefully not too early, but really increasing that overlap and the ways that Studios and Torn Label kind of inform each other. Hopefully, it's going to become even more robust in the next year or so.
We just had a visitor to Studios Inc. who they have an artist residency in Chicago. They're opening one in Kansas City, which will bring me to another question I want to ask you too. However, they said their residency space in Chicago partners with a micro-brew and has a micro-brew on site, and they thought it was really interesting that we had a micro-brew on site. So they didn't want to do the exact same thing we're doing here. So instead of a microbrew, they want to add to the landscape of the East Crossroads, and they're going to do a coffee shop.
Oh, yeah.
But, I'm excited that another artist residency is coming to Kansas City because it offers more. In the East Crossroads, the microbrew scene and the distillery scene, it seems like it's booming.
Right.
And do you share that same excitement that there's more breweries, or is that a challenge?
No, it's really been great for all of us. And that's been incredibly exciting about the Crossroads, especially the East Crossroads, since we took up shop here a little over nearly 6 years or so when we kind of signed a lease and started the process of opening the brewery. Like I said, it was kind of the dream location, but things were really, in terms of the brewing scene, they weren't where they are now in the Crossroads. And since then, the years since we opened, there's been, it's hard to even keep track at this point. I believe there's probably 7 or so, maybe 7 or 8 breweries within a very walkable small radius around the Crossroads. So around the same time we opened Border Brewing and Double Shift opening, and then not too much longer, Imperial, City Barrel, and Casual Animal, and not to mention KC Wine Works and Restless Spirits, Mia Mule Distillery. So it's really kind of boomed in a way that I think it's fantastic, because it feels like a real natural extension of the neighborhood. It feels like all these businesses, they're very much of the Crossroads, and I feel like all of us who do own and operate those businesses really kind of want to contribute to the fabric of the neighborhood, and also kind of preserve what has made the Crossroads such a unique, special neighborhood in KC for so long.
It becomes an anchor.
Yeah.
For someone to be able to come and walk around and see and be able to compare, or just crawl. I don't know if crawl's the right word. You don't want to crawl down our sidewalks, but and we've talked a little bit about how the overlap in art, that we're neighbors, but there's even more overlap that's present inside your tasting room,
right,
with some of the artists who were residents here building out your space. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We've tried, to kind of just any point along the way to really kind of emphasize and to kind of draw upon that where we could. So Peter Warren, fantastic local artist, woodworker, he built our tap room, which is very much based on his aesthetic, and extensively utilizes local lumber with bits of KC history. So we feel like that's a great was kind of a nod to some of the history of the artists here. Thomas Woodward, who's our sales manager, he also is a KC Art Institute graduate and a fantastic artist in his own right. And his painting Magic was the namesake and inspiration for probably our most popular beer, Magic, an IPA with raspberry and lemon peel, which is one that people still kind of go crazy for every year when we release it in April. So he always is someone that we kind of want to draw upon his expertise and his knowledge of the KC and beyond the art scene, because that's again something that kind of keeps us anchored to where we are. And we have a series which Magic is a part of, that we've been doing since the beginning, called our artist collaboration series. And those have been beers where we brew a beer kind of in collaboration with, or drawing inspiration from some local artist. And actually the first one was Peter Warren. We did a beer, a one-off called Lumberlung, which kind of keeping exactly in his the type of work that he does. It was a brown ale aged on charred Missouri white oak. So again, just kind of it was something we always kind of want to work with them and kind of do a beer they're happy with, and it ends up being hopefully as reflective of their artistic sensibility as our brewery sensibility.
Does it keep you engaged in the process and in the creative process of beer making, to have that, to put that matrix of and that collaboration?
Yeah, I think it's just a really kind of fun and different lens to think about a beer than we're used to doing. It's always I am always a fan of limitations or sort of specific frameworks. And I think that having too much freedom, and where it's like, okay, what do I brew? It could be anything. That's kind of a daunting thought. That kind of it leads to a little bit of kind of terrified, just hitting a wall in terms of what you want to do. But kind of having a little bit of all right, how do we have do a really tasty beer that we're happy with, that is inspired or feels like this specific artwork, or uses materials that this artist might enjoy having represented in a work. Now,
I didn't know that you guys did that and issued those artist inspired beers when we came up with the concept for the show. And so for everyone listening, Rob Gann, our gallery director, and I decided to challenge ourselves, much like you said, and invite outside curators or our patrons or people that are associated with the Studios Inc. to curate a show, and we love the idea of Torn Label being able to curate a show and then add the layer of what you were saying. Does this beer taste like this artwork? But now we're doing it in reverse. We're asking you to look through our collection and look at the artwork, pick an artwork, and then challenge you to marry it with one of your beers based on what you should taste, or what you taste, or what you see. Does it sync up? And the title of the show is Synesthesia, a collaboration of senses. And I like the challenge of a viewer to see if their synapses in their brains can rewire, and if they have a sample of Alpha Pale, and let's say that was paired with one of the artworks, if they can see what they taste in that artwork, or taste what they see, what they taste what they see.
Yeah.
Same thing, different directions. So have you ever been asked to curate an art exhibit before?
No, certainly not. No, it was really exciting and really fun, and kind of certainly daunting for me, at least. Obviously not something that I had done or thought I would do, but it was such a really great, interesting way of approaching it. Again, with this idea of, for me, this specific lens, this kind of parameters of approaching it. Because it is such an open-ended prompt, of finding a work that you feel pairs with a specific beer, that can be a lot of different things. So we left it up to each of to me and to Travis and to all of our employees who wanted to participate, which I believe all of them did. That can mean so many different things. It can mean this work reminds you of an experience where you might have had that beer. It might just be the color or the texture kind of hits you or your brain a certain way that reminds you of a beer. It might be that the artist you knew the artist in some way, and you associate that memory with the artist with having that certain beer with him at some point. It might be the process of how the work was put together. Maybe makes you think of the process of how a beer was put together. So I love that the idea of kind of challenging ourselves a little bit in terms of kind of I like that this prompt kind of ended up being very different for everyone, but I think everyone kind of came onto it and enjoyed the challenge.
So describe the artwork you selected.
Yeah, so I took a piece from Deborah Smith called Above the Horizon, and it's a really fantastic, striking work where I like the kind of stark black and white, and the kind of the lines, the combination of straight and angled lines make for a very striking but simple kind of harmony. But more so than that, kind of after being struck by the work itself, I looked a little bit into the process and the materials that went into it, and it was kind of produced by a combination of women's kimonos and men's suit linings, and I certainly kind of appreciate that kind of found material and kind of reconfiguring those materials in a way that kind of plays with both the history of it and recontextualize it, obviously, into something completely new and different, and that made me think of, I think, in a more overarching sense, it kind of reminds me in a lot of ways of how we like to approach beer here at Torn Label, and that we do kind of like to be at the intersection of experimentation and approachability. We kind of take all these diverse influences of as beer travelers, as craft beer fans, from being a part of and visiting beer cultures in Belgium and in Southern California and East Coast, English styles, all those, and we kind of filter them through our kind of Midwestern KC sensibility, where we kind of have those influences, we draw upon them, but we also want to blend them into kind of a cohesive sensibility, so they don't feel too scattershot. Yeah. Monk and Honey is the beer that I picked for that pairing, which I think embodies that philosophy maybe better than any of them. It's a Belgian style blonde ale. It's the kind of what the brewing monks of Belgium you would consider a table beer. It'd be they're kind of, in Belgian ales, they're known a bit more for their kind of stronger Belgian style doubles, triples, quads that they send more for consumption in other countries, which are much more stronger, higher ABV, a bit more complex. But the ones that they kind of drink every day are your table beers. Those are your kind of a little bit more mellow ABV, and just kind of ones you can kind of have with a meal, enjoy with your bread daily, as the monks do it. And it's also kind of informed by Travis's time. He went to Belgium and kind of spent spent time with the monks at one of the breweries out there at West Felitrin, and kind of the experience of him kind of having breakfast with with these monks and having the table beer every day, and
beer for breakfast.
You need to fortify yourself for a long early day of devotion. Yeah. And so, it's inspired by that experience, this kind of a style that is not brewed quite as often as a Belgian style double or triple. Traditionally, a beer like that, might be fortified with Belgian style candy sugar or candy syrup. We wanted to put our own spin on it, so we use local honey from Cooper Farm in Peculiar, Missouri, which is, again, like we always kind of want to take these influences and these experiences, but we also want to kind of do something to make them our own and to kind of make them feel as representative of ourselves as much as the component pieces of it. So that's kind of where I feel like it lined up with Deborah's piece, in the sense that we want to take those components and kind of make them your own in a way. Absolutely.
To sew them together.
Yep, exactly.
Into the piece. And you are sitting in front of Deborah's piece right now, and it's beautiful. So as Rafi is telling me this, I'm able to look at the work and go, I see that. Yes, I see that. Next step would be to have a monk and honey.
Absolutely.
And see if I can taste it.
You don't have to go far to have one. Is the good news.
Absolutely. Were there interesting conversations that happened between you and the other employees about the work that they were picking, and was anyone challenged by this process, or did it create some fun conversation?
What's interesting, I have to say, I've been getting all the selections and kind of bits and pieces, at one point or the other. Sometimes they'll send me the work, and then later on the kind of rationale and why they want to pick what they did. I've kind of been sending them along, passing them forward, but I kind of have been wanting to hold off and kind of like take them all in as a whole when the curation opens, just so I can, because I'm getting it a little bit piecemeal, so I'd rather kind of approach it with a little bit as fresh eyes and just kind of do it that way, just because, it feels like more like I'm compiling right now than appreciating, the whys of it, so I kind of want to come in and kind of take it all in.
Well, just as anybody that gets to come in on First Friday. So the show will be set up with the artwork, and each label will have the description of the work. We'll have a short statement from the person who picked it, why they were attracted to it. So just in case you didn't have Rafi at your side, you'd be able to understand what you were thinking, and then the typical label information that talks about the medium, the size, the year it was created, and then I think we are going to add the beer pairing on the bottom with the notes of why, either I'm not Rob's really in charge of this too, so you and I both get to take this in all at once, but if it says something of notes of common ground, sure, or subtleness or brightness, but we're gonna allow the Torn Label employees to choose the notes that they're sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah, I think it's a great, it feels so natural. I feel like that every beer has its own different personality, so I think that's kind of I think our challenge was maybe to kind of convey that to other people, how these beers can kind of say something and just kind of feel very different in a way that aligns with these works.
It was so good talking to you about this, because beyond the initial concept of the show, Synesthesia, to hear the history of Torn Label and really why you and Travis got into it and how you approach your beer making actually gives me goosebumps a little bit. That you are artists in a way, and you approach your business from that place of integrity and craft. And I've always shared with people who, when you speak about different crafts, like even ceramics or fiber, or any furniture making, if you take a craft to such a high level of accomplishment, it becomes art. So, and when I hear your approach, it sounds like that of an artist in their studio, and I like that Torn Label exists in a former artist studio and will expand into more studio space. And I'm so grateful that you're our neighbor, and I'm looking forward to the opening of Synesthesia, Collaboration of Senses. It will be Friday, October 4th from 6 to 9 p.m. So thank you, Rafi. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited about it.
For more information on our resident artists, events, and exhibitions, please visit www.studiosinc.org. That's studiosinc.org. Thanks for listening. The music featured on our podcast is from artists Barry Anderson and Ricky Ullman of Lucite Plains.